I recently read a paper which has everything to do with what you're doing. So this is very strange you brought this up, but it was called the memory paradox, and it was written by Barbara Oakley, who's an American cognitive psychologist. Long, it's about an 80-page paper. It's very long, but summarizing it, she essentially suggests that this entire paper is a neuroscience-based explanation for a recent reversal of the Flynn effect. Are you familiar with the Flynn effect? So the Flynn effect is a huge ongoing research project founded by James Flynn. He was just a psychologist in the time when this started, 1930s. But it's measured IQs in first world countries since the 1930s. So up until the 2000s, early 2000s, this IQ trend has steadily increased, and they've named this the Flynn effect.
Okay.
So in the early 2000s and up until recently, this trend has capped and is now reversed. So now into 2020 and 2025, right around this proliferation of AI and all of these other memory aids, we've seen the Flynn effect, or just the upward trend of human IQs, now fall. And so this paper is a neuroscience-based explanation as to why this is happening. So she has two main arguments. One, which I'm sure you're going to be able to speak to, is the educational shift away from direct instruction and memorization. So kind of like you were suggesting, how has pedagogical models evolved or shifted over the years that are maybe hurting us? And then the other one, which I'm very passionate about, is the habitual cognitive offloading to other devices. So I think this trend started kind of flattening in the early 2000s with the internet. And, we've had calculators for a long time, but just now we have calculators in our pocket. The internet, we're Googling things, that kind of has evolved into AI, and now it's doing things for us. We have GPSs taking us places. We have AI making our calendars. We've offloaded so many things, cognitive offloaded so many things that we're no longer working that muscle, like you're saying. We have a lifter doing everything for our brains. I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
I mean, I think you're right. You're talking about cognitive offloading, and the result of that becomes what I'm reading as a term called cognitive debt. And so if you are offloading all of that, you're not using your brain,
right?
Which is a muscle. And we know what happens to muscles when you don't use them. They get flabby.
Yeah, they atrophy.
They atrophy. And it is hard to explain that to maybe someone in later high school. At UCCS, our students are very busy. So many of them work part-time. They're trying to take a full load so they can get out more quickly. We have a lot of military vets there because they're using the GI Bill, or they're taking classes concurrently for some reason, military-affiliated families and such. And so people have a lot of other demands on their time, and it is attractive. It's an attractive option. Like, I kind of know the stuff, but I don't really have time to do this right now. So I'm going to let this do it for me. And I'll skim over the paper. But what we are losing, and I will say, it's not like I'm, this purist here. Sometimes I will I can't even think about this email right now. Just help me write this. I have the benefit though of 30, 40, whatever years in education, having done the heavy lifting. I know that I need to keep my own brain strong, or it will atrophy as easily as anybody else's. But when you are 18 years old, and so take anything you want to do. Let's say you're going to give a presentation. And as of yet, you can have a little avatar, but it's really, AI can't be you and stand up there. Maybe we'll get to holograms and all Star Trek-y at some point. But
it's coming for
sure. It's coming, I'm sure. But for now, you are the one that has to deliver the speech. So we have, the comm field has a little, few more years before we have to worry about some of those things. But if you don't think about your target audience, you have a subject you want to talk about. And I see this with students. I know you're passionate about this subject, and that's fine. You can talk about it, but who are you talking to? What level do you need to talk to this group of people about that? And the example I often give is, think that you work for a retirement planning firm and you have to give a presentation. And how would your presentation look different if you're talking to 25-year-olds versus 45-year-olds versus 60 years old? What is going to be different about what you say and how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know that you need to even think about an audience and you don't do some thinking about the audience, chances are that your message is going to be lost if it's a disconnect between who you wrote it for and who's listening.
Mm.
And so as an educator, the other thing that we miss in in-person classes, and particularly, we miss from online classes is reading a room. If you're a really good teacher, one of the reasons and the things I really miss about teaching in person is I can look at the sea of faces and I can see someone going, huh? I am totally lost. I can't see that online.
Right.
And because I can't see it, I can't reach out to that student and say, all right, who has questions? I know you have questions. Mary, what are you thinking? Even I'm not calling Mary out for having a question or looking confused. I'm just saying, Mary, what are you thinking?
Right.
Because I can see the tenor of the room. AI can't do that. AI is not invested in your success. AI, isn't really going to feel good or bad if you get an A or a C or a D or not be able to pull it together for the final because you didn't do the heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important that we think about these things about how we are using the tools we have, but encouraging students in their own best interest to do the heavy lifting, to help them understand when you get into the workplace, maybe they're not going to have the same tools you've used. Maybe they're going to require you to give your thoughts in a meeting and you're not going to be able to type the question into AI while you're sitting right there.
Right. How, I've heard like some jokes already because I recently went back to school later in life, mid-30s, and talking to some of my friends, they're like, oh, I went to college back when you actually had to write your own papers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a funny joke because, I don't know. I see the importance in doing the work, like we're saying here. So how do we communicate to maybe younger generations who don't share that motive to do the work and build that cognitive muscle? Because to them, it might just be about the easy A. And then they get through college and they got a 4.0 and woo, look at me. But over those 4 years, 6 years, whatever it may be, they may have actually cognitively deteriorated a little bit or a lot of it, depending on how much, they use their spotter.
Right. So you bring up a good point. I don't know how you teach motivation. I can be passionate. I can be energetic. I could be, I can be try to make classes exciting and engaging and things like that, even online ones. But I think that at the end of the day, you have to figure out your why. Why are you there? If you're there just to get the grade, and look, there were classes where chemistry way back when, it's like, could I just pass this class? That's all I really care about. Just let me pass. And I had to kind of let that go. That wasn't my thing. That it was never going to be my why. But then again, at the end of the day, you've got to figure out, and we see this a little bit, you come in as a freshman and it's a freshman. And when I was particularly teaching in person, that's one of the things a lot of in our department, most of our heavy tech oriented classes, online classes, we don't recommend them for freshmen because there's just so much you have to manage as you're coming in as a freshman that has really nothing to do with academics. It's not probably the best use for them, but you can always ask the instructor for permission. A freshman could be someone who's been in the military for 15 years, who's been very motivated and knows exactly what they want, and they'll be fine in class. So I think it's just a matter of continuing to help them realize and understand the connection to their career and why it's important that they do some heavy lifting. That one of the things we're doing a lot more and encouraging is people are bringing back the blue book. That is, blue book is, I have my blue books from my master's degree many gazillion years ago, where you had an essay question and you had to write it all. This is before computers and laptops. Okay, so I'm really dating myself. You had to write it all by hand. And it would the answer took 4 pages in this book, and there were 3 questions, and that was your final exam, and you turned in the blue book.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to write it down, no notes, no nothing.
I love that.
No
we should
nothing.
go back to that.
Well, yeah, some of
Here
your
I am with
other
my notebook.
professors,
They're like, I'm very old school.
If you had turned in that, it just has a little blue cover on it.
Oh, okay.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
So that's the blue book. And now with typewriters, they can use AI and they can just copy and paste. Although most educators who have some experience with AI, we can kind of get a sense. I don't use any of the AI. Did my student use AI for this paper spotter? Because they're not very accurate. They're often invalid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use that. But I've done this enough and I've taught long enough that I get a sense of, wait, that's not your writing.
Right.
You would never use the word, parent, some weird words. Like, pretty sure you don't know what that word means.
Right.
That's not your writing.
And it's within this like very complex, deep level or layered sentence.
Yeah, that's not your writing. And then, so there's some spots there that we see, but oral presentations, filming the oral presentation, because then you're getting a lot of skills coming out. They have to stand up there, recall, and make a coherent argument or answer the question or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you can set it so that it's timed, so they can't go get a script and write a script and then come back, which means they really have to know it.
Yeah.
So there are some ways to really try to bring some of that back, to force the reluctant ones to exercise their brain and to really use their brain.
Yeah.
It's interesting because one of my classes, it's called a digital communication technology. And just last week, they met in small groups, online, synchronous, recorded conversation, not the flat discussion board. Those are a little outdated. So that they could talk to and learn from and build on each other and have some engagement in class. Right. And the question was all about this. There was a podcast with an NPR reporter from the New York Times that I have them listen to. And I asked them some questions about this. And one of the things the reporter did was an experiment. The reporter turned over her entire set of decisions for the entire week to AI and was comparing the different AIs, like what should I eat? Which route should I walk to work? What should I wear? Just everything. How should I handle this? Everything. And at that time, it has changed. At that time, the only AI tool that sort of pushed back and said, do you think that's a good idea? Was Claude. And now if you've not heard of Claude, it's sort of an AI writing tool. It's a pretty good one. That has become more common, some of those guardrails. People have begun, we're starting to see a lot of the data about people who've committed suicide as the result of their conversations with AI and things like that, which is really scary. Yeah. Really scary. And so, but that's a lack of humanness that the AI still at this point doesn't have. And so anyway, the students were talking about use of AI and did they consider it cheating and what was the difference between their expectations for use of AI and their instructors that they've been seeing. And I had a good number of students, of course it was being recorded and they knew I was going to listen, but I had a good number of students saying, I don't use it. I mean, I'm paying for this. I need to do the work. I know I need to do the work. They sounded genuine and authentic, but I was pleasantly surprised. They recognize the dangers, but they also see where it can be really fun and useful, planning a vacation or something like that.
For sure.
So,
you said like you don't know how to teach motivation. It definitely comes down to extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic would be the A, the degree, etc. But the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation is fleeting as far as I'm concerned. There's always going to be a reason to do something externally, but internally, if the motivation is to better yourself, become more intelligent, to constantly be better than you were yesterday, smarter than you were yesterday, that's the real motivation. Oh, yeah. I don't know how we teach that. That's something that has to be internally found. I think that especially, I have two kids, especially I had my son who he told us in third grade, he worked very hard to be average. And as an educator, I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this child? He's fine now. He's almost 26. He's great, but he found his own motivation. Right. As much as I would try to instill it or push it, or as, someone told me, stop trying to optimize him. I was like, well, he's going to have to optimize himself. I think sometimes it finds you.
For some of us, it's much later than for others.
Yeah.
But I think if you are open to improvement, and maybe some days you are, maybe some days you aren't. For me, I'm just a really naturally curious person.
That's good.
And so I think if you're a curious person, there's something you want out of going to college in the first place. And for me, particularly as that very young freshman, I wasn't motivated by school, but I was having a lot of fun. So I was motivated to stay in school so I could keep having fun. So, it comes in all forms.
Right.